What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the Modern Jack channel. I'm your modern jack of all trades. And today I want to discuss what I consider to be my top 10 good financial habits to embrace to achieve a sustainable, lower stress lifestyle. If you enjoy the content on this channel, please subscribe and leave a comment below telling me what you'd like to hear on here as well. Now today, I'm not going to discuss what you should be investing in or some new career to make it big. In this video, my goal is to bring some practical actions to start or stop that you might want to consider on your own personal finance journey. I believe that these top 10 habits can apply to anyone and that they'll bring you closer to financial peace and success. Number 1, know your limits. As you navigate personal finance, it's important to know your own level of discipline around finance. Ask yourself, how much debt are you taking on? Do you actually track your spending versus your income? Now, thinking you know your limits and actually knowing your limits are two different things. Consider this. How do you personally identify your habits around spending versus income? Do you track your spending? Can you accurately estimate your typical patterns for spending for a category, say, food, over a month? How do you validate your estimates? Now, even if your estimate for a category such as food was off by $100 a month, if you span that over a year, that's $1,200 in potential savings that you've now spent. Now, subscription services are pretty popular right now for things like streaming services, phone plans, financing phones, and even coffee. These services work so well for those companies because you sign up for them and then just forget about the monthly payments. But those monthly payments can start to add up. It's $10 here or $10 there. You start adding those together, span it over a year, now you've got a pretty big number. I highly recommend that you use some type of finance tracker so that you can track your spending over each category. I personally use Mint to look at my month-to-month spending for each category. Generally, I can tell based on that how much I'm spending in each category and whether I'm going over or under my budget. Now, if you're looking for more hands-on guidance, I'd recommend the app You Need a Budget, or YNAB for short. I've received positive feedback from friends and several financial advisors about this app and how well it works. Now, this one does have a cost, but a minimal subscription versus the hundreds of dollars you can potentially save monthly using this app, I think it's a pretty good deal. Number 2, identify your risk tolerance and what that means. Do you know how much risk you can tolerate? Do you know how much risk you're taking on currently? This is one of those areas that many people oftentimes assume they actually know their risk level, but do they really? A good method I've heard for determining your actual risk tolerance and whether you're at the right level is to look at your reaction during market downturns. Did you adjust your investments? Just because you decided to put more money in the market doesn't mean that you're actually at the right risk tolerance. You might want to reconsider where your risk is. Any adjustment during a significant change in the market really indicates that you varied from your risk tolerance. I'd highly recommend going and taking a risk tolerance quiz. There are plenty of free options that you can find online. These can help you to invest appropriately for who you are. And be honest, this doesn't affect anyone else but you. It's okay if you have a lower risk tolerance than others or a higher risk tolerance. Either one is okay. Each person's unique in their personal finance goals. But it's far more dangerous to set your investments at a different risk tolerance level than what you're actually capable of handling. Varying from your risk tolerance could lead to significant losses in the market. In the case that you're taking on too much risk, you might make adjustments quickly and lose out on potential gains. On the flip side, you might be capable of taking on higher risk, but by lowering your risk as much as possible, you're missing out on potential gains as well. Number 3, don't do it your way. Now consider, who doesn't want to be the next founder of a company like Microsoft or Apple? Many believe that their new idea is going to be the strategy to beat the market. Let me just say that more likely than not, your new strategy isn't going to beat that boring old investment strategy. Now, many of you are probably thinking, hold on, you don't know what my plan is. This will work. No one's ever done it before. Well, I'll challenge you by saying that odds are, in a world with nearly 8 billion people, your new way has probably been done before. And the reason that you haven't heard of this idea before is it probably didn't work. I'd recommend sticking to proven ways to grow your net worth. Honestly, most people can't take a significant hit from gambling at all and losing it. Don't put yourself in that situation. Now, if you don't know where to go for good advice, I suggest seeking out a reputable financial advisor. If that's out of your price range, there are countless podcasts and blogs out there with good financial advice. Just pick up a good finance book to read or listen to a good podcast. This leads me to my next point. Number 4, don't do it alone. Now, maybe you've heard the phrase, personal finance is personal. Well, in some sense that's true. This is correct if by personal you mean that each person's goals are going to be unique to that individual. So building a budget and strategy around your own personal goals is going to be very personal and unique to you. However, personal finance is not personal. Don't keep it private. If you want to have the best chances at achieving success, or at least minimizing your losses, you're going to want to seek input from others. Be careful though. When I say seek input, I mean from professional advisors or those who have a long-term proven record. This isn't your best friend who somehow got rich quickly on some new idea. I find the best way to evaluate whether you're talking to the right person is to seek input from, say, 10 different people, and the piece of input that 9 out of the 10 of them say is right is probably the right thing to do. Number 5, seek to learn from your mistakes more than your successes. Our natural tendency is to focus on the positive things in our life, the things that we've done right. But there's a challenge in that. Everyone wants to tell you about their success story. No one wants to tell you about their failures. When you hear about successes all the time, you get a real skewed view of reality. How often have your friends said, "Check out how much I made on this stock investment"? How many times have they told you about how much they lost on a purchase? Lost money on an investment? I've never lost money on anything. We definitely hear way more about successes. Now, if we hear about successes all the time, then why aren't all of our friends millionaires? Maybe if we heard more about the failures in people's lives, we might have a better sense of reality and what's going on around us. I would recommend to focus on the decisions that led to your failures. Go look at interviews of some of the most successful people in the world. You'll see a recurring pattern in the responses that they give. More often than not, they'll talk about some significant failures that they've had along their life. And they'll talk about the decisions that they made from those failures and how that eventually led to the successes in their life. My recommendation? Reflect back on a few big failures that you've had across your life. Keep those failures in mind to remind yourself of the mistakes that you made there so that you don't make those again. Determine what changes needed to happen based on those failures and keep those close to heart. Number 6, avoid FOMO. Now this one just goes along with many of the other points that I've made already. No one wants to miss out on riding the path to financial freedom and success. Who would ever want to be the last person working? But there are a few issues with fear of missing out. Let's be honest, by the time someone tells you about their success story, the make it big moment has probably already passed. And as we've talked about before, it's probably best to stick to proven methods of success. The things that press us to have this fear are all really short-term ideas. They push us to change our investing strategy quickly, most likely forcing us to adjust our risk tolerance. However, the proven track record is time in the market almost always beats timing the market. By making those changes to avoid missing out on some big new strategy, you're really trying to time the market here, and you're making adjustments rather than just letting it sit in the market for a longer period of time. I think that you'll find that remaining consistent in the market will likely lead to more success than trying to time the market. My recommendation, don't give in to FOMO. As enticing as it is, just don't. Number 7, don't try to keep up with the Joneses. Let's just be honest, the Joneses can't even keep up with the Joneses. We're all looking at each other and seeing the things that they bought and wanting to buy the same things that they bought as well. Problem is, when we look at 20 different people and try to buy all of their things, none of them have all 20 of those things. We're trying to accomplish something that none of them have done. We face an even bigger challenge now with social media. Now we're not comparing ourselves to the neighbor down the street. We're comparing ourselves to the 0.1% of the world that has more money than we could ever achieve. We're trying to live a lifestyle of all of the top 10 richest people in the world at the same time. How are we ever going to succeed at that? If you can establish your own goals in life, not the money you want to have, but the fulfilling things you want to do, then you can build an attainable strategy to do just that. Don't try to live the life that someone else has chosen to live. Plan what's important to you, and start by trying to build a personal financial plan. Again, there are plenty of resources out there on Google that you can find to help do this. This should start with details around your goals in life. The whole plan will be built around the goals that you have. Try to stick to this plan and reflect on it whenever you decide to make a big purchase. This should help minimize the influence from what everyone else has. All right, so let's get into some of the more practical pieces as you start to build out this strategy. These next few are important to anyone's financial plan. The more you embrace these, the easier your financial plan will be to achieve. Number 8, plan for the unexpected. Now, as you begin to reduce your debt and move towards a positive net worth, it's important to establish some type of emergency fund, even a small one to start. If you've listened to Dave Ramsey at all, he heavily emphasizes getting out of debt. But the first thing on his list of steps is to establish about a $1,000 emergency fund. This step alone can make it so much easier to achieve your other financial goals. Did you know that 1/3 of Americans would feel uncomfortable having to cover a $400 unexpected expense? A brand new PlayStation 5 costs $500 on its own. One weekend shopping spree might cost that much. A new flagship smartphone costs over $1,000. Now, are you buying that new smartphone or gaming system and still have trouble covering that $500 expense? Unexpected expenses will absolutely come up in life. It's important to prepare for these unexpected expenses so they don't cripple your financial situation. And I know we all want those big purchases like a smartphone, but I would say that spending on those big purchases before you've established an emergency fund is really overextending on your budget, since we all know that the unexpected will happen. If you don't have an emergency fund, start one ASAP. Start with something small that you can achieve. $1,000, even less if that's all you can achieve right now. If you're having a tough time getting to that savings, try to reduce unnecessary spending in other categories. Really evaluate what you're spending in which categories and where you can reduce that as much as possible. And if you can't get to that emergency fund quickly, don't fret. Take your time with it. Just do a little bit at a time. It doesn't have to happen overnight. If it takes a few months or more to achieve this, that's okay. But I should say that it really should be prioritized over fun spending until that's accomplished. If you already have a small emergency fund, try to expand it to a savings of roughly 3 to 6 months of spending. The idea with saving that much is that if you had something drastic such as losing your job occur, you could continue to live just as you were for those few months as you sought out a new job. And remember, don't use money in your emergency fund for non-emergencies. But also don't forget that the money is there for emergencies. If you have an emergency, use the money in your emergency fund for that. Number 9, plan for the expected. Now we know that there will be unexpected expenses, but there are a lot of expenses in life that we think are unexpected, but really should expect them. From the day we buy a new car or a used car, really that car is depreciating immediately. The car will continue to degrade until maintenance issues come up. A vehicle maintenance expense should not be unexpected. When it happens, we may have not expected it, but we should expect that it's going to happen at some point. Another example is an air conditioner. Same thing, an air conditioner is degrading from day one. We should expect that eventually it's going to break. Don't be surprised by the expense when it occurs. People get sick, phones and computers get old, cars break down, refrigerators stop cooling. These are all things that we know will eventually happen. Start to create savings in your budget for the expected expenses as well. The earlier you can begin to save for these things, the easier it will be to save what you need. If you know you'll probably buy a new $500 phone in 2 years, you can start saving $21 per month over 24 months, or you can wait a year and save $42 per month, or maybe you'll just wait until your phone dies and then you have to spend $500 immediately. I'd much rather put $21 aside per month rather than having to unexpectedly come up with $500. And number 10, make finances fun. Reward yourself. Budget to live life. Finances and budgeting are not there to be a restriction. It's there to allow you to enjoy life without feeling stuck. When you build a budget, build it to live your life. Don't overextend. Debt will ultimately lead to you feeling stuck again. But don't stuff everything under a pillow either. It's there to enrich your life. Use it. When you have a good budget established and start following these recommendations, you'll start to feel like you can reward yourself and enjoy life a little bit more. This list of recommendations isn't exhaustive, but I can tell you from experience that maintaining these good habits will get you much closer to your financial goals. I hope that these tips today will help you to enjoy life more without feeling bogged down by budgeting and finances. Thanks for listening in today. Until next time.